Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on another Workshop Wednesday. My name is Victor Verba, and I will be your host for today's session. Today, we are joined by my good friend, Mr. Michael Stratton, aka Magic Mike, another system engineer over here at Variphy. And in today's workshop, Mike is going to go ahead and take us through some of the various options available in the CDR reporting. Before we get going, just a quick overview of our company. We'll do a live demo, perform Q&A, and if you have any questions, please make sure you use the Q&A panel in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And then after Q&A, we're going to reward one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card. Just a quick overview of Variphy. Variphy is the preferred analytics management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR, UCCX, and Cube analytics, customizable dashboards, widgets, remote phone control, and change management. But today, we're going to be focusing on CDR reporting and some of the options available within those reports. So if you have any other questions about any of our other features, feel free to chat me up in the QA panel or reach out to your account manager. We'd be more than happy to get into any details. One last thing before we do kick things off. For those of you looking for more of a hands-off experience, we do offer a managed consulting service. This is a service provides you a dedicated system engineer from Variphy to do all the heavy lifting, giving all you and your users a completely hands-off experience. We're basically an extension of your organization, upgrades, one-on-one training, reports, dashboard building. Your ninja would have you covered. Really just open up a ticket, let us know what you're looking for, and we'll go ahead and work on it for you. Your dedicated ninja is engaged one-on-one for any additional consulting, advanced reporting, unassisted reporting, or dashboard configurations. So anything you need, just give us a holler, and we'll go ahead and take care of it. If you'd like any more information on our consulting services, please feel free to reach out to your account manager, and we'd be happy to see if a consulting service is right for you. So with all of that said, Mike, how's it going out there today?
It's going good.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and pass you the ball here, and let's go ahead and jump into the wild.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Kind of the goal for this workshop is to become more familiar with all the different options in the CU7 report. So really, what we're talking about are these icons here on the left-hand side of my screen, and the ones really that I want to kind of take a deep dive into, but not too deep. The grouping stats and the search set statistics. I mean, I've been with Variphy for 3 years now. I've worked with Cisco CDR for 15 years. When I came here, the one thing that made me realize that I was a new guy kind of starting all over again were the grouping stats and then the search set statistics. So, but I'll go over everything, kind of start in the beginning and kind of go over how they kind of work. The other ones will kind of, very high level. We've done workshops on cradle to grave and search sets, and call history is pretty straightforward. So, we'll just jump into it right now. We'll start with the basics. Top icon, the far left corner of the reports. This is where you set up the report. Real simple settings, basic formatting. You can give the report a name. Tell the software if the report can be shared or set up a description. You can for this setting here, this is more kind of complicated where there's a lot of data from the call manager that we pull into the reports. Think of it like end users' first names, last names, device information like device pools, and like device descriptions. All of that, especially with the end user information, needs to be matched to the call records when you're displaying end user information in the reports. So we have a couple different methods in how we link everything together. That's a whole other different workshop, but basically, we have the flexibility. For 99 times out of 100, your cluster settings are going to be just the default settings will work. If it's not working, chances are if you're in here, you're on a WebEx with one of us, troubleshooting a report. So everything else is just formatting, date formatting, time formatting, and a bunch of you can turn on or off headers or table of contents and summary. So basically what I'm talking about, you can hide the title, the date and time range, the cluster information, the table of contents, all this you can hide in the report if you want to make it look cleaner. Those settings are all here under the basic options. The next option is perhaps kind of like the backbone of the report. It is the search set. So this is where you're telling our software what you want to look for, or if you're familiar with SQL, you're building a SQL query. My query here or my search set, I'm looking for basically just the hunt pilot number. Look, I want all calls that go into hunt pilot 77280. Different options. You can include all calls. You can get fancy with the different durations. There's a whole bunch of different options here. One thing I do like to point out, a lot of our drop downs and lists are quite lengthy. If you want to get rid of a lot of this information, everything has a search. So if I want original call party number, I can just start typing and it filters the results. And now I can easily find original call party number. But for this workshop, we have going back. I'm just grabbing again hunt pilot information, looking into 77280. So all of the data I'm bringing into the report is based on this search set. So you can see if you go back to this example report here, I have here's my search criteria: hunt pilot number equals 77280. The total call count is 203 call records. So the rest of the report, looking at the grouping, the search set, the call history, and the cradle to grave, is all going to come from these 203 calls. Now, cradle to grave, because it's transfer legs and it's going to bring in new call legs, but those new call legs are all going to be related to those 203 calls. So the foundation for the data in the report all comes from the search set or search sets if you're building out multiple search sets in the reports. I will skip over these two. I'll get back to these two. Call history details and cradle to grave. Going back to those 203 call records, if there's, in this report, if there's 203 records, and I'll bring up my example for detail. Looking at the call detail, what it does is it brings back the details. So it brings back for those 203 records, there's going to be 203 rows of data. You can select, any different options from date and times to numbers to devices and end user information to see, who placed the call, who made the call, where the call went, how it got there, how it ended, the duration, the ring time. All that information is available in the call history details. Just select anything from the list. There's a filter at the top. Definitely use it if you're thinking what you're looking for. A number or a duration. You can type in what you're looking for, and then it'll filter the results. But related or linked to the call history is the cradle to grave, and we have different workshops. You can go on our website, look up different workshops or webinars that kind of cover cradle to grave. But cradle to grave, in kind of a nutshell, when a call comes in, if it's transferred in Cisco's CDR, it creates multiple records. So you can see not just one record that shows where the call went to, but there's multiple records. Like here, the call comes into Unity, goes to contact center, goes to an agent. The agent transfers the call to another agent. Then the agent transfers the call again, and the call then comes into the final agent, where the call then terminates at Hunt Group or Hunt Pilot 77280. So the detail will show you the individual call records from your initial search. The cradle to grave will take that information and kind of expand it to show you what happened before that call record and then what happens after that call record as well. Okay. All right. So we'll jump into the more complex stats here, and this is we'll get kind of more in depth. We'll start off with the search set statistics. This is by default, this is turned on. This search set summary table is enabled. Going back to my first report, this is the search set summary table where you're just shown, depending upon the values, everything is based upon your initial query or the initial search set or search sets. Make things a little easier, I'll turn it off for now, and we can kind of cover the different tables and options. So the first option is the search set summary table. Down below, you have the call stats data tables, the call scenario volume tables, volume charts, and then underneath those, you have the capacity and utilization tables and charts. So we'll go ahead, jump into those. So going back, the search set summary table is enabled by default. You can select different values like total call counts, durations, percentages. Everything is based upon your initial search set. So for my sample report, everything is based upon the number of calls that come into Hunt Group or Hunt Pilot number 77280. So in my sample, I'm looking at 203 total calls. The average call duration is 1 minute and 40 seconds. I have 2 abandoned calls and then 2 calls that also went to voicemail. So here you see I selected total call count, average duration, abandon, and then voicemail call count. You can add as many as you want, take away as many as you want, and all those will be contained in that table. If you have multiple search sets in our current version, you can sort or you can sort or order the search sets either by total count, highest to lowest, or lowest to highest, or by alphabetically by name. Okay, turn this guy off. The next data set will be the total call statistics data tables. This data table is broken down by a time unit. So this is where if you want to say, hey, I have my search set, I have 203 calls into my hunt group. I want to break down how many calls occurred per day or per month or per week or per hour. The data tables are where you can see that function. So for here in my example, I've selected 2 different time units. You can select one or you can select more. I have hour, a day, and date. So what this will do, this will create 2 different tables. The first table will be by date or by by hour of day, and then a separate table will give me these stats below. It'll give me these stats also by date. So my sample report here are my total call statistics by hour of day, broken down by hour. So I have total call count, my abandoned call count, and then my abandoned call percentage. You'll see, this is the same 3 values that I've selected here, broken down by hour. And by report, though, I'm filtering only during business hours. So I'm filtering by 7 to 4 or 7 to 5. If you have a report and you're running it for all 24 hours, you will get, you will see it from start at 12 a.m. and then finish up at 11 p.m. If you're running as PDF, the columns will wrap, so you will get 2 rows. If you're running like an Excel or HTML, everything will be stretched, and all the stats for each data type will be on the same row. And that is it. Moving on. We have these 2 are related, or pretty much the same. One's just a table, one's a chart. The total call scenario volume tables and the total call scenario volume charts. Much like the data tables, it breaks the data down by either 1 or more different time unit types. So here I have just hour of day selected, and then I have different call scenarios. So we're getting kind of out of the like the percentages, the averages, and that type of information, and we're looking just at the specific call scenarios, like abandoned, answered, connected, calls to voicemail. There's a good variety of different call scenarios, from transfer, how many calls were transferred to, transferred from, blind transfers, all these different types of call scenarios. So the top section will give me a table, one for each time unit. And then the second one will give me a chart, only in PDF or HTML, but for each time unit type. And then it'll give me, the chart will contain values for whichever scenario types I have selected here down below. So in my sample report, here is the total call scenario volume per hour of day. So going back to the report, here I've selected hour of day, and I want to see total calls, abandoned calls, answered, connected, and voicemail calls. So I have, and actually let me move webhooks out of the way so you can see this a little bit easier. So total calls, abandoned calls, answered, connected, and voicemail. I have, and this is all kind of pretty much canned. So call counts, and then it breaks down these different call scenarios as the percent of total, the average count per hour of day, the average percent per hour of day. The per values are all based upon what you select when you configure the table. And one thing I will point out with these call scenarios, we have a total count of 203. It's the same thing as our standard search set or standard search set that was brought back. So it's the same calls, but if you add up these columns, you're going to get around like 300 and something calls. The reason is because one call record can fall under multiple scenarios. So a call that was answered is also connected. So these 158 answered calls make up, all but 2 of the connected calls. And I'm pretty positive that those other 2 missing answered calls are voicemail calls. So like as an example, the difference between answered and connected is if I called Vic and he answered the call, he's the one who was dialed and he's the one who answered the call. So that call would count as answered. Um, and it also would count as connected. But if I called Vic and he didn't answer and it rolled over to voicemail, that call was not answered by Vic, but the call went to voicemail, so it was connected. If I called Vic and he didn't answer and I hung up before the call went to voicemail, that call wasn't answered, it wasn't connected, it wasn't voicemail, but it would count as abandoned. So again, not always, the columns don't always add up, and that's because calls can kind of pop up under multiple scenarios. And then dropping down to the charts down below, I have the, going back to my reports, turn this guy off. I have the call scenario volume charts. I'm looking at the time unit is by quarter hour of day, and I'm looking for just total calls and abandoned calls. So here I have everything broken down by quarter hour, and then you can see the orange yellow is a number of total calls with a couple of abandoned calls thrown in. One here at 9 o'clock, 9:30ish, and one at 2. All right. And then the final set of options are the total concurrent call activity charts. So this is getting into concurrency where we're looking more at like overlapping calls. They come in really handy if you're looking at like trunks or gateways or cubes or we're looking at call flow because we're looking at more so like bandwidth or how many calls are happening at any one time. But concurrency is also useful for help. It's also great for like looking at like contact centers, hunt groups, where you want to know how many calls were happening at any one time. You also want to know what's the highest number of calls that were happening at any one point in time. So really, it doesn't just apply to trunking or gateways or routing in and out. It's also great for hunt groups and for like number of calls going into the contact centers. You can see maybe like your peak hour or just the peak traffic. So here is this is the kind of the summary table. This hunt group does not have a lot of call activity. Just 2 peak concurrent calls. The duration though was for 26 minutes. So for 26 minutes for I think this report was for the previous week. There were 2 concurrent calls occurring for 26 minutes of duration. The average number of concurrent calls less than 1 total call. Then here's the chart. So here's the first part was the table, and there's a second table below that, and then here's the call activity chart. So you can see just peak concurrency. Again, not a lot of call traffic, but mostly just between 1 to 2 calls over the past couple of days. And then the final section is the final part of the concurrency. Just looking at it's a breakdown based upon the value or the number of concurrent calls, how long that concurrency was for, and then what percentage of the total overall time the number was concurrent. Okay. Then, so that's pretty much wraps it up for the search set. Again, just to kind of covered again the search sets really, or the search set statistics are going to show you values based upon your initial search. So it's the overall kind of like the global level. If you're running a report on a hunt group, this will give you how many calls came into the hunt group. If you're running on like a department, that's how many calls came into your initial search or how many calls make up your initial search. The second set of statistics are the grouping stats. The grouping stats take those the search set stats or the data that comes through your search, and then it allows you to break it down or to group the calls based on some value or number or set of data. So in this example, the report, and let me grab my report for grouping. I took, for like a hunt group report, a good example is I have a search set. I'm looking for all the calls into the hunt group. I'm going to take the grouping and take those hunt group calls and break it down by how many calls went to each agent. Or you can, run a report for like multiple departments and see, how many calls went to each department, went to each end user. Just any way you want to kind of not drill down, but kind of break out that initial search data and break it out into some sort of grouping. So in this case, what I didn't save. I'm grouping on the terminating CUCM end user ID. So the grouping by default is disabled. So to enable it, turn on the toggle. So when you're building a new report, the grouping will look like this. Turn it on, and you'll see under the grouping here, I'm grouping on the terminating CUCM end user ID. Some of the values have like a secondary grouping, so you can, like a good example here, you could group by the end user and then further group their data by like the call type. Another example would be if you like group your calls by department, then you could also group it by end user. This toggle here for grouping calls for an associate. So part of the grouping, when we're linking calls together, we have to, in this scenario, because we're linking the call records to values that reside within the call manager. In some cases, not all of those calls can be matched to an end user. So those calls that aren't matched can be included in the report, or they can be excluded. In this case, so you can see here's my initial grouping. I have 3 calls out of the 203 that went to, or that couldn't be linked to an end user. I'm assuming 2 of those calls were those 2 voicemail calls. I'm not sure where the other one is, but maybe it could be like it could be an end user. Maybe it's not configured correctly. Maybe their device is not associated correctly. Something along those lines. But once you have the grouping selected, you can, especially for end users, you can select how you're displaying the name, first and last name, and then you have the option to sort your groupings. You can sort by alphabetically, by durations, or by total call count. In this report, I want to sort by, I want to show the agent at the top who has the highest number of calls. So I'm sorting by total call count, highest to lowest. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Not too big. Okay. And then a couple other different options. You can configure how many, like a max number of people to show in the report. So if you want to see like the top 10 users, you could set it for the top 10. And then the 2 options here, you can set a min and a max value for the total call count. So this comes in, like if you have a bunch of end users with like 0 calls and you want to just only show people who have at least 1 call record, get rid of the 0, put in the 1 for the minimum value. If you have like in the other option for the maximum number of calls, we use it a lot with the dormant phone report. So if we only want to see like phones that have 0 call records, we can set this back to 0 and then toss a 0 in there and get rid of that. So you will only show calls or show devices with a minimum value of 0 and a maximum value of 0. All right, moving down. If the grouping stats here contains value, data or entries that you don't want to include in the grouping, maybe they're coming through based on the search set or somehow the way calls are being routed, you could always exclude or filter the grouping data by creating a grouping search set that only filters just this grouping. It won't affect the actual, like the main search set. It'll only filter on the grouping data. Then we're getting to all the different tables and charts. So I'll turn these all off and go through them. The grouping summary is kind of like the search set statistics. This is the grouping summary here where we have our base, grouping. We're grouping on the end user ID, and then we're showing in my report, I'm showing total call count, average durations, average ring duration, and total call duration. So you'll see them here: total call count, duration, average ring duration, and then total call duration. So there's some basic grouping, and then again, there's those 203 calls. Next option down, the grouping call stat data tables, volume tables, and volume charts. Much like the search set statistics, these options work the exact same way. The statistic data tables contain the same values, total calls, durations, average ring durations, all that information that are available in the search sets, except that now, instead of it being based at the search set level, it is going to be based on whatever you're grouping with. So here, in this, if you have a lot of data you're grouping on, this can be a big report. Like this report here is 58 pages. Let me see if I can go back to this, create a table of contents. So here is my grouping. grouping call stats right here. So here's the breakdown. So I selected for my breakdown by hour a day and by date. I want to see total call count answered and transferred from call counts. I want to see how many calls are being transferred from those agents. So I have total call counts broken down by my agents, broken down and then broken down by hour of day. Then I had the answered call counts, same thing with all the different agents, and then the transfer from call counts. So I can see how many calls are being transferred from those agents. The next option down, same as the search set statistics, where we're seeing the volume table. So I'm looking at the different call scenario types here: total calls, answered calls, transferred from, abandoned calls, broken down by hour a day. And then I've got the charts. These ones are broken down by date. You can have, if you want to see the same data, just one represented in the table, one is a graph. You can select the same time units. Just for in my example, I have different data types. We got dates, total calls, connected calls, answered and transfer or blind transfer from calls. So going up to my top table of contents, there's my volume table, so I can have total calls for each agent, call counts, and then broken down by day, and then answer calls broken down by total call counts broken down, and everything else is broken down by day, and then it repeats for the blind or the transfer from calls as well. And then towards the bottom of the report, I have the charts. So I have one chart per each agent. So I've got Bill here with his total calls, number of connected calls, answered calls, transferred in, or blind transfer calls, broken up by day. So you can see that's how I have it selected here. And then it just repeats for each of the agents in the grouping. And then the final section goes back to concurrency and call activity and capacity. Three different options: one for concurrent activity summary, one for the charts, and then one is for the activity tables. Same thing as the search set, except that now it's also including the grouping. So we go back. So here is, again, this is not really the capacity, and the concurrency is not really great for a hunt group report when it's broken by end users, because they're only taking one call at a time. So really, I would expect the peak utilization to be at 1, which it is. So really, this is more in the case if you're running like a report where you're looking for like all calls, or like a bunch of calls, and then you want to break it out by, let's say, by gateway or by SIP trunk. You could get a list of devices here, and you can see the number of peak concurrent calls for each device. And then here's the concurrency again. Doesn't do a whole lot because we're grouping it on the end user, but it's definitely available. Same thing as the search set statistics. And then it repeats for each of the objects you're grouping on. In this case, it's on users. Okay, perfect. Then I think we are running low on time. So Vic, I think that kind of covers everything. Kind of high overview. If there's any questions, I can take them right now.
Let me unmute myself here. So we did have a question come in. One of the questions is what are the orange rows in your cradle to grave search there when you ran that report?
So cradle to grave. So the search set is, and I don't have it on here, but the initial search for the hunt group brings back 200, I think it was 203 calls. The highlighted calls are the 203 records that are from my initial search. So if I go back to my initial page, I'm looking for all the calls where the hunt pilot number equals 77280. So in this case, I'm looking for, so this is one of the records here, the hunt pilot number equals 77280. This one is a little bit unique for hunt pilot, where Cisco only populates the hunt pilot when the call is answered. But to bring in all the additional hunt pilot records, we also search in this field as well. So really, when you're filtering on hunt pilot DN, you're looking in this field, and you're also looking in this field. So short answer: the highlighted orange records are the ones that are from your initial search. So that basic search that you built when building your report, these are the 203 records. Everything else that's not highlighted, those are the additional call records that are brought in from the cradle to grave.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. All right. And I think that's good. If you want to go ahead and let me see if I can steal that ball back from you here. If there's any other questions, please, again, go ahead, feel free, hit us up in the chat panel. We will get to them as best as we can here. All right, so popping back to our slide deck here, and there was our Q&A question. To announce the winner of this week's workshop, last but not least, make sure if you have not yet, pop over to planet.verify.com, join our user community, take a look what other people with like type for reporting are asking, what they're building. It's a great resource to be able to bounce questions off of your peers. So make sure you pop over to planet.verify.com and log in and take a look at what's going on over there. The login for planet.verify.com will be the same as your verify.com login. And last but not least, congratulations, Christopher Volrath. Christopher, you are this week's winner. So we'll have your account manager go ahead and reach out to you. Congratulations on the win. And we'll go ahead and make sure we get you that $50 Amazon gift card. And don't forget, register for our upcoming workshop, which will be the Widget Workshop. Join Dre and Jim Schultens, two additional SEs over here at Verify, as they take a look and explain a little bit of what are all of those widgets and what do they do. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Again, if you haven't already done so, take a look at planet.verify.com, join our user community, post some pictures of your animals, or post some quick questions that you may have about some other reports that people are running. Again, I want to thank you guys for your time. Awesome job today, Mike, and enjoy the rest of your day, all.